on our regular agenda.
You are now live.
Oh, thank you very much, Kayla. Thank you, Council. We've now returned from an in-camera session, and we only had one brief item on there, and we'll get to that in just a moment after I read item number 3, which is our disclosure, sorry, item number 2, which is approval of the agenda of the council meeting. Can I have a recommendation? Be it resolved that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve the agenda dated August the 5th, 2021 as presented. Can I have a mover and seconder on the open session agenda? Deputy Mayor Burton, seconded by Councillor McKechnie. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. All those in favor? Very good. Motion carries. Item 3 is disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Is there anybody with a disclosure during our sessions here at our open session? All right, seeing none, if anything comes up, please bring it forward at that time and we'll be happy to deal with it. Council, as I mentioned, I'll bring in a report from a Horizon report from our closed session. Council met just moments ago to deal with a property matter. We received a report from our Public Works Department in regards to a property land transfer. I have a motion of which I will read, and then I will look for a mover and seconder to present it in open session. Resolution be it resolved that council approve a property exchange with the owners of 7129 Highway 26, where parts 1 and parts 3 are on, okay, let me start again, just because it's detailed. The owners of 7129 Highway 26, where parts 1 and 3 on 51R 42844 are conveyed to the township, and parts 6 on plan 51R 42644 are conveyed to the owners to accommodate the improvement of at the Highway 26 and Mowat Street intersections, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the required legal documents to finalize this land exchange. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Leishman, seconded by Councillor Walker. Is there any questions on the motion, members of council? All right, seeing none, I'll prepare to call the motion. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. And thank you to Mike Ron for preparing that report for us. It's always good to see us move on with that, that project there on Mowat Street. All right, council. We are now on to our agenda, which is item number 4 on this agenda, which says community hall presentation. So we have a presentation regarding a couple of things in the community halls. I just want to start out with a couple of statements. First of all, to acknowledge Terry Vachon as our general manager in that department of recreation, culture, and tourism. He and his staff have worked very hard on this matter, and I know that they have consulted with members of the public and members of our boards extensively, and also worked with our engineering firm, RJ Burnside. And so there's been a significant amount of work in this. So I want to acknowledge Terry and his department and staff through the CAO that they've worked a lot on this project. And so we're going to have a good discussion as we kick off our discussions about the halls and potential renovations and anything else that we might want to do. I want to acknowledge that council has honestly been talking about this for a long time. And I'm really glad that we've got to this point where we have these presentations finally in front of us. And I also acknowledge, of course, that council has honestly been listening to members of the hall boards, our volunteers, who we appreciate every day for their efforts to serve our community. So I'm really happy that we're finally at that point. We can talk about specifics as we move along, but I would encourage members of council to keep their questioning specifically on each of the reports as they're presented, and then we'll have a discussion perhaps at the end where we bring in a holistic view of the entire project on how that works, and we'll get some comments from members of our staff. If there's any questions before we turn to Terry? Anybody on council got any questions? All right, Mr. Vachon, how about you pick up and tell us about the Evening Community Center and the report that you've prepared?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so as promised, we're back a little bit later than what we had originally intended, but we are here today. Before I share my screens with council, I just wanted to remind council that we have presented council's options to all 6 of the community halls. We were waiting for the halls to provide their feedback and motions back to council with their preferred choices. And that process lasted a little longer than what we anticipated. Your worship, for today's meeting, I'm going to have 3 PowerPoint presentations. The first one is going to be a quick recap of our original presentation that we had, that council had seen together as part of the brainstorming session. So there's a few slides on there that we have updated through the 6 presentations with the small community halls. So I want to go through those with council very quickly. And then I will, as promised, we're going to show a presentation for the 6 halls all by themselves or alone. Today, we're going to be presenting the Evening Hall as well as the Brentwood Hall. We anticipate there being 3 meetings with council. The second meeting will be with the Sunnydale Hall as well as the Nottawa Hall. And then the third meeting will be for the remaining 2 being the Duntroon Hall and the Needham Hall. So without further ado, your worship, I will share my screen with my recap, if that's okay with you. Right here.
We're scratching.
Can you guys see my screen? Your worship, awesome. Okay, let me just, oh. There's that same problem I had before, your worship. For some reason, the screen does some weird stuff. So if it's okay with you, I'll just leave it like this, in this format, instead of doing the full screen. Does council see? Can council see the whole slide, the main slide? Yes, perfect, okay. So as I mentioned, there's going to be 4 steps today. The first one, we're going to do a quick recap with the background information. Second, we'll allow council to answer any, ask any outstanding questions regarding the background information. 3, we're going to review all the hall board reports. And then 4, hopefully we'll determine next steps. So let me just, so again, I'm not going to be going through all the information in all the slides, but I will highlight certain areas of certain slides that we've have adjusted some information. This one here, this is the second slide. I think this is a good one to recap ourselves with. How did we get here? Again, just to refresh council's memory, the Ontario provincial government implemented these accessibility standards to help businesses and organizations to remove barriers to improve accessibility in 5 key areas. These standards are part of the Accessibility for Ontario with Disabilities Act established in 2005. The AODA has been active in Ontario since 2005. However, people might still be wondering, what is AODA? The Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act is an Ontario law mandating that organizations must follow standards to become more accessible for people with disabilities. The goal for the province is to be fully accessible by 2025. All levels of government, private sector, and nonprofits must comply with this legislation. 3 key points for council to consider. First one is all directors and officers of a corporation has a duty under the subsection 4, and who fails to carry out that duty is guilty, and if they're guilty of a major offense, conviction is liable to a fine and not more than $100,000 per day. So for major offenses, the government has established significant fines. Second key point, the council of every municipality having a population of not less than 10,000 people shall establish an accessibility advisory committee, in which Clearview Township has, or continue any such committee that was established before the day this section comes into force. So we're in compliance there. And third, by January 1st, 2016, corporations with 50 employees or more need to make new or developed public spaces accessible. No new dates have been updated as we are past the January 1st, 2016 date, and has not been updated by the AODA Act. But again, the province does have a goal to be fully accessible by 2025. On the bottom part of the slide, if council recalls, we had established some pretty aggressive timelines to get through this process. We are now in the, back in April of 2020, last year, council received a report from Burnsides with a list of recommendations on renovations that are required under the AODA Act. February of 2021, this year, council had 2 brainstorming sessions, whereas council provided options for the hall boards to consider. In May, March, and April of 2021, council and staff met with individual hall boards and the public to present council's preferred options. We had established May as the month to bring back all the hall board's preferences to council. As I said earlier, it did take a little longer than we anticipated. We are at that stage today. So May 2021 is actually August 2021. And the final stage that we are anticipating is to implement the decisions that are made by council on capital projects. The next slide, again, is a new slide that had been created when we made presentations to the halls, and we feel as staff it is very important to communicate this to council and to the public. Again, why are we really doing this? Why are we really talking about accessibility renovations to our halls? We talked about the law, we talked about the act, but there are other very important reasons as well. In 2016, the 5 standards of the AODA were combined under the Integrated Accessibility Standards Regulation, the IASR. The 5 standards that were going to be impacted by accessibility regulations were 1, information and communication, 2, employment, 3, transportation, 4, designs of public spaces, and 5, customer service. The last 2 are the 2 that are significantly impacted by the small halls today. Why do we need the AODA? Again, as described on the province's website, accessibility is good for both the economy and the community. The population of Ontarians with disabilities is steadily growing. We know this based on stats. Third, accessible information and employment make it possible for the growing groups of people to contribute to the economy and to society. Likewise, accessible transportation and public spaces ensure that people can move around their communities just like anybody else. Finally, the standards of the AODA give all people an equal footing as they work, play, learn, teach, buy, sell, and use their diverse talents to benefit their communities and their province. You will see, council, that I put that last sentence in bold as it's extremely important. And sometimes we tend to forget that. Little reminders like this is always healthy when we go through this process. On the bottom of the slide, I have 4 key points that I also want to share with council. The first one is people with disabilities are just like everyone else. They shop and do business with their friends and their family, just like anybody else. Second, as our population ages, the number of people with disabilities will increase. We know this. Third, the key is that the goal date for an accessible Ontario is still 2025. And finally, it's not considered public if everyone can't use it. Again, just to recap very quickly, the reserves, if you recall, as of December 31st, 2020, the existing reserve for this project is set at $1.2 million. In 2021, a contribution to the reserve was made for another $250,000. So the balance projected for 2021 is at $1.5 million. Again, if we break that number down per 6 or 7 halls, you see there the amounts. We also reflected in our brainstorming session and captured that the insurance costs the municipality for all 6 halls combined approximately $9,000 a year. Again, the cost of financing, it's still low today, hovering somewhere around the 2% mark. And again, there are a lot of expenses that the township provides to our halls, such as water and sewer expense, solar revenue, snow removal, grass cutting, garbage pickup, promotions, and obviously staff resources from both the finance department and our Parks and Rec department. Again, I'm not going to share the whole FADS concept. Council is quite familiar with this. I'm not going to reread this one, but all the information is there. And again, I can answer any questions if council has any. Again, a quick recap of the overall project as of 2019. Again, we're now mainly going to be talking about the modified FADS amount. When we brainstormed back in March, full FADS and modified FADS were kind of both on the table. But as we went through the community process, the engagement process with the halls, we're going to be mainly talking about modified FADS moving forward. So again, as of 2019, these are the estimates provided by Burnside. And again, if I could remind council, this is pre-pandemic amounts. Back in 2019, we did not know we would be in a pandemic in 2020. Again, I talked about the inflation and some of the stats that would justify RJ Burnside's prediction of a 5% increase per year. If we take those inflations over a 2-year period, again, just to remind council, we're looking at about a modified FADS, you're looking at about $4.5 million for all 6 halls. This is another key slide, a new slide that was presented to the halls, but was not presented during the brainstorming session with council. It was talked about at the tail end, and we felt as staff this is a very key slide to share with council and the members of the public. Just wanted to, we talked about other key community capital projects that will be coming to Clearview Township in the future. The timelines are not set, but we know from experience, and we obviously know from our, again, a lot of these projects are public works and water and sewer department, but they've been talking about these projects for a while. So again, just to share those with council, we know that the Collingwood Street Bridge will be coming to council in the future. It represents approximately $3.5 million. The Stainer Water Servicing project at $35 million. The Creemore Sewer plan, $10 million. I should be saying plant. The Creemore Water Solutions, approximately $6 million. The Fire and Public Works building, it's estimated at approximately $3 million. And as well as the Stainer Sewer project, which represents approximately $9.3 million. And these are just the bigger ticket items that we are aware of that are going to be coming in the future. These 6 projects represent approximately $66.5 million. Again, as you're making decisions with respect to community halls or any other community projects, this is very important as you plan out the future finances of the township. Again, a lot of information here. I took a lot of time last time when we were brainstorming with council. Again, I'm not going to go through them all. They're all there. I know council has read them. I know you guys are quite familiar with them. Again, I just wanted to remind council that this is all here. Hopefully you guys have taken some time to read some of the information to remind yourselves of the process moving forward. Again, this was a slide that we had talked about, that what would happen if the municipality did not own the building. An option that you will see when we go through the individual hall presentations again. An option that was put on the table by council was for perhaps the hall boards to take over the buildings themselves in a new corporate entity. And again, this slide would come into play. It's still there. There's still a lot of valid information, but it may not be and it might not be talked about, as all 6 halls you will see were not interested in owning their buildings. They all wanted the municipality to continue to own the buildings as we do today. Again, council decision moving forward. Again, I'm not going to go through every line, but again, these are all key points that will have an impact on council's decisions moving forward. Again, the fire and ventilation requirements that are required in all 6 halls. Again, not going to recap that other than to say that, just to refresh council's memory, we're looking at approximately $20,000 per hall, or $120,000 for all 6 halls. Again, we talked about an exit strategy. If the halls were sold, again, as I previously mentioned, it may not come into play, but you never know, things may change. And again, there's some pertinent information for council to consider. So, your worship, I'm just going to stop sharing this slide. So again, just a quick recap. As per our agenda, I know I'm willing and able to answer any questions council may have on the recap portion that I presented just now.
Okay, thank you, Terry. And again, thank you for the work that you've put into this. I just saw Councillor Patterson flash his card. So again, this is on the recap portion. Any discussion or questions? If Councillor Patterson, you'd like to go ahead, and then I see Councillor McKechnie. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, just a note for council that the slide that shows the total capital spending is, I agree with Terry, is quite significant. And it is material to any decisions we made on any one of those capital programs, including the hall. So it's a subject that should be discussed in terms of what council's priority are. And I know we're sort of planning a strategic budget planning meeting, and hopefully that could be done within the next month or so, because when we show that chart, while we're talking about the small halls, we have to put the time value on those in the number of where the money is going to be spent. And I know staff knows some of it, and some of it might be as a result of staff reports and council decisions. So I just make that point that while that's an interesting chart, the information has to be refined so that we can make a decision using that information. Because it all depends on the amount of money that we have to spend each year, and the amount of money we're going to put away in the reserves, etc. So I just would make that point, not to forget the fact that that's part of the council's priority setting if we choose to do so.
Councillor Patterson, I just want to respond to that before I go to the CAO. You will recall that certainly during our in-camera discussions, as well as all the presentations that were made to all of our volunteer hall boards, this chart or similar content chart was delivered and talked about. The reality is that we have significant capital projects that will be facing this municipality in the near future. Some of those are constantly being worked on. A small example of that is the water servicing project. I think the number was 35 million that was shown on Terry's chart, but that water servicing project is something that we're meeting with constantly with our local developers in and around the Stayner area. And so there are some solutions that are being worked on to assist the community. But I think the acknowledgement of putting those numbers together and creating that chart is all about recognizing that as a community, we do have a commitment to that debt load that we have to face, and how we find the ways to pay that or commit to refunding that or managing that. That's part of what the staff are doing on every single one of those. It's a smaller one there that's on that list, $3 million, a public works fire structure that's still being worked on by our staff. I did get a brief conversation with our chief about that a while ago, but I know that it's still on the, in investigating it and how we could work that out. And they're not prepared to bring forward a report to council to consider it. But putting it on the list is there so that we know that we will be facing that type of debt in the future. And so that's why that list has been prepared. Your point about timing, Councillor Patterson, is important because these all are not arriving, in the next month. To be fair, this council could make resolutions and pass direction to staff to activate all of those. And that would put us in quite a difficult situation, frankly, just for the workload. So we have to be respectful of the abilities of contractors as well as our staff to actually meet any of those projects. So I think it's reasonable to expect that council will be considering each of these big projects in the future. And so we'll have to consider how we handle each one and when we handle each one based on timing factors, both construction and real, deadline responsibilities that we have to deliver those services. So, the Collingwood Street Bridge has been hanging over our head, for a while because the decision by the county to replace the North Collingwood Street Bridge, which is beautiful, by the way, that has triggered that decision that has to be made about the Collingwood Street culvert / bridge. So we have many discussions to make and timing issues that we'll have to work with our CAO to bring to council. And so I agree with you completely. One thing I'm not sure on though, Tom, is you did mention a budget strategic review meeting. That is still sort of questioned as to whether that's actually happening.
Yes.
Our last meeting that we had prior to the budget for 2021, was held at our community center, and we did accomplish some objectives in there, I believe, in that meeting. I'm unsure if it's actually proven to be genuinely helpful in the preparation of the budget, but perhaps it's more used as an educational tool so that members of the council and members of staff are up to date on what each other are working on or looking at as priorities. So I support your commentary regarding priority setting. I'm unsure whether we're actually going to go ahead and hold that meeting yet, Tom. So that's something that we should be discussing as a council. I would ask that we have that discussion outside of this discussion, as this council meeting is about these halls. So maybe we can park that conversation and pull it up on another council meeting if that's comfortable for you, sir.
I said everything I wanted to say in my opening statement, and I agree with everything you said and reinforced, I think, what I was trying to make a point on. So
Thanks.
council, let's make the decision next meeting. Okay.
All right, so we'll talk about that specific issue about having another meeting at another meeting. But tell you what, let's move on. Councillor McKechnie, I think you had your card up for questions about Terry's report. Anything from the report so far?
Yeah, just thank you, Doug, your worship. I think you might have sort of answered my question when you answered Tom's there. So basically, I mean, Terry's going to be coming to us now with a breakdown on each individual hall, and we're going to be discussing it. I was just sort of wondering if I just want to make sure the council is all on the same page. Are we going to do all the halls? I mean, personally, I think we should. I'll put it out there right now that I think that we should do all the halls. But I'm just wondering if maybe do any members of council have any reservations about, renovating all of the halls? I'd be interested to know that before Terry gets into the weeds on each individual hall.
It's a good question. I can leave that open if, by the way, just for information, just to halt that conversation, the Councillor Deneen has just popped back on the screen. She sent me a note. She's having internet trouble. So if she pops in and out of the meeting, she's still participating with her speakers working, but sometimes her camera's not on. So members of council, is there any commentary or question to Councillor McKechnie's question about members? Yes, Mr. Walker, you can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I do have some reservations about the halls on some of them, but I wish to see the report first to see what the hall boards have said and to hear Terry's comments before I make some other comments myself. I believe that there are maybe a couple that we might really think about in this whole picture, which I don't want to, but I'm looking at financially the costs of OADA and the activity in the halls. So I'd rather wait till after the reports before I make any further comments on the halls. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Is anybody else with any other comments that'd like to jump in? Councillor Leishman, before you go, Councillor Leishman, I just want to acknowledge Councillor Lamers has joined us on the meeting, and he's popping in and out. Looks like he's trying to join the meeting, so welcome, Councillor Lamers. I'll go to Councillor Leishman first. Go ahead, Connie.
Thank you. John won't have any trouble once he gets that fiber all hooked up. First of all, Terry, did you invite the Halls to this meeting, or did anybody tell them about it?
First of all, the meeting was advertised as a regular meeting. I
Right.
believe the Halls are aware that we're holding the meeting, but it's a
Okay.
council meeting that we're holding right here. So.
Well, I know. I just wondered if they were listening in. I did tell Sunnydale. So I was wondering. Anyway, about the halls. Yes, I think we should renovate them all if we can. I think we should do the low-lying fruit first. The ones that are really eager and gung-ho and they have the money in the bank. That would be really helpful. I think there'll be naturally, we might actually lose a couple of halls anyway. So just because for whatever reason, one in particular through the notes that we just got from Terry, and the other one I'm not sure about because we haven't really, they haven't really gone through all the process yet. So I would like to save as many as we can, whatever we can afford. So that's where I'm at.
All right, thank you, Councillor. I saw the Deputy Mayor just card up. Or sorry, before you go, Barry. Terry, you had your card. You go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to answer Councillor Leishman's question to me with respect to the halls aware, I got a note from Kayla, our clerk, to say that she had notified the halls that this meeting was happening today and they could watch it on YouTube.
Thank you, sir. Deputy Mayor Burton. Hi, Barry.
Thank you, thank you, Your Worship. And I have a question for our treasurer, Miss Kelly, the Director of Finance. So, but we saw the total for all the fixes. If we were to fix everything, and I forget what that amount was. Terry, remind me, was it 6 million or something? Or
About 5 million.
5 million. Okay, so that $5 million. So if we were to commit all $5 million. Starting in 2022, how much of a percentage would that equal over the next 4 years? So what increase would we have to put on each year to cover that $5 million over a 4-year period?
Good question. Giving Kelly a few minutes to rev up the computer and the calculator. Hi, Kelly. What do you think?
I already put you on the spot, Kelly. I should have asked you that before so you'd be prepared.
Oh, this keeps me on my toes, keeps me young, right? Your Worship, to Deputy Mayor Burton. I just want to qualify what your question is. You're asking what a tax rate increase would be for the 3.5 million?
For the 5 million, right?
Right. Well, so we've got 5 million as a price tag. We have about 1.5 million in the reserve right now.
But I assume that 1.5 million is going to get eaten up in additional cost. And so let's call it 5 million. That's what we got to spend. And what would that be over? How much of is it? Like 2% for the next 4 years, or is it 5% for the next 4 years? That's what I'm asking. As a tax increase, what would it be?
Yeah, and our net tax increase usually runs about 1.5%, but if you can give me just 2 minutes, I will pop off screen and come back with a fairly accurate number for you.
Okay, that'd be great. So, Your Worship, while Kelly's doing that, I'd like to, say what Councillor McKechnie is saying, Councillor Leishman. I think we need to fix them all. I think we need, these are all. We are a community, or we are a township of various communities, and each community is, different in its own way and important in its own way. And I think we would have a hard time favoring some halls over others. So I think if we're going to do this, I think we have to commit and put a realistic time frame on it and some realistic budgeting.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'd just like to add and remind Council, as I've read the budget and as I've seen it over the years, we make a regular contribution to this fund in the neighborhood of $200,000 to $250,000 per year gets contributed to this fund. So currently the fund sits at somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.5 million. Again, just for the record, these are all approximate digits as a result of there are exact numbers that our clerks or our treasury report when we do the budget. But for the numbers that we're speaking of today, we're talking approximately $1.5 million is sitting in that account right now. It's sitting there because it's been applied every year from current tax rates, the current rate today. So as we collect tax dollars from all of the taxpayers across Clearview Township, a little portion goes into every department, as you know. And for this one, the division comes down to equal approximately $250,000 every year. So what that does is that builds that reserve, and that fund can be, or that amount of dollar value that we're currently collecting can be applied to pay down debentures. So this council has done this a couple times by paying down future debentures. The first one that I can recall is when we built the Stainer Fire Hall, the Stainer Hub Fire Center with our partnership with the County of Simcoe. We created I believe a 40-year debenture on that one because it's a significant infrastructure with a single purpose, and we were able to fund it for a long period of time. That's about $3.5 million that we have, been applying a little bit of taxpayers' money to every year to pay down that debt. Another one that was most recent was the library, the Stainer Branch Library of the Clearview Public Library. Similar project there, approximately $170,000 every year of our taxes that we collect from all taxpayers. That goes into paying the fund for the Stainer Branch Library. And that fund, we pay about $140,000 a year in debenture fees to pay down the debt on that project. So it would not be a stretch for this municipality to take that $200,000 that we collect and put into this reserve every year and use that to pay down a debt load that our treasurer is about to tell us in the neighborhood of $5 million and how we would manage paying that down. So it's certainly doable within the system that we work in, and and also provides a service to the community. So Deputy Mayor, I see that the treasurer has returned. Perhaps we'll just go right to her then to help answer your question. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship to Deputy Mayor Burton. Based on a 20-year amortization, we'd be looking at a roughly $400,000 a year loan payment. And as His Worship says, we're already contributing $250,000 towards that. So we're looking roughly about a 2.7% tax increase to bump the reserve up to the $400,000, and that would cover off the loan payments. That's a net Clearview increase, not the total tax rate increase.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that. And that was for the 5 million, correct?
Correct.
Right. So because the other thing I wanted to mention about the 1.5 that we have in the reserve now is we put some numbers together for some of these halls, but I think what we got to realize too is some of these numbers we put together, and I discussed this with the mayor earlier today, that some of these numbers may not be realistic that the hall boards can raise that much money. I mean, we put a figure of 25%. So we're probably going to have to go back to the halls and say, how much can you realistically raise? If it's $1 million to fix up a thing, how realistic is it for, a group to raise $250,000? I think it's unrealistic, so I think those are the other things we're going to have to look at. So that's why I wanted the information based on the 5 million, because I think we're going to end up beating that 1.5 as we go along and work to negotiate with the halls. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much. It's good information to have bandied around here. Again, I would not hold anybody to the digits that we're speaking about right now, but I do thank Kelly McDonald for her advice that she provided there, and that's good information. All right, anybody else? I see Councillor Lamers has jumped in. Nice to see you, John. Thank you for joining us. We haven't really got into the meat of the matter here, John, but we're getting pretty close. So I'll turn right to you. Do you have any comments that you'd like to jump in with to start with, John?
Not at this moment.
Okay. Well, welcome aboard. Thank you. Councillor Patterson, I saw you put your card up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Just just establishing, I guess, what I think is a generally understood ground rule. So we're doing this in 3 sessions, as Terry outlined. I'm assuming, this is more for our audience, I'm assuming that we're not going to make any final decisions on any one until all 6 are fully understood. That's the first part of my question.
I will go with the will of council. You can make a decision anytime. I think it's proper to receive all the information that our staff want to present to us to help us make decisions. But as you know, Councillor, we do have the authority to move ahead at any time, but we're trying to make sure that we hear from all of our staff, and also the staff reports bring forward information to come directly from our board volunteers. So that's also critical for me in helping make decisions. So is that comfortable, Tom?
Well, I too think given what we know now, I think we have the wherewithal to do all the boards for all the reasons we've talked to in the past. But there are some intermediate steps to get to that final decision. And one of them is, I hope council agrees, that we will have seen all of them in the series of this meeting and the next 2. And then we'll have a better idea what all the halls look like. And then we'll make some decisions. I think that's true, is it not?
That's comfortable for me. I appreciate that. Terry, John, do you have any comment on that stance that the councillor is directing? John?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I think we want to get an idea where they all are. They're all at different positions on where they are with what they want developed and or where they want to go next. So they're not all the same. Some are more ready than others. And the volunteer involvement in the different community centers is greater in some and to a lesser extent lesser in others. And it's just the nature of volunteerism. Sometimes it gets very active and sometimes it slows down. So you may get enough information that makes you feel comfortable to proceed after understanding where each are, but you may not have full information on some of the final decisions of the halls. So that may be the best way to answer that. And so it's really council's prerogative on when they want to make a decision. I think you'll see that some of the hall boards will be very ambitious and they'll want to see council make a decision fairly soon. They'd like to see some activity. So you'll have that pressure as well. So as you move forward, Terry's going to be expressing these as we go on and move the next one. And the next one's on the 9th, Terry? Next one's on the 9th. So they're going to try to fit it in over the course. In the interim, I think you might be getting some pressure from some of the halls to move. So I think that's how it's going to be.
Thank you. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, and that's really why I'm asking the question, John. So thank you for that. So, because my point of view on this is I do support what we've seen so far. I think it's doable. Of course, we've got some final adjustments to do, and we're going to be wise in deciding what elements, let's say in the modified FADs, are discretionary. I've heard that expression both from council staff and the hall boards.
That's right.
Maybe we don't need everything, especially if it impacts our fundraising from the hall board's point of view. So, but I do think I'm going to concentrate on, for example, tonight, evening in Brentwood, to say what we can start moving towards that with those 2 right now, because they're anxious. Because I know, following in the background, backstage, listening to the hall boards, there's a lot of questions they still have. They're just grasping now the impact of the AODA and really, quite frankly, I think they understand accessibility. I think they're starting to understand much more clearly what FADs and modified FADs, hybrid FADs is. Not just an acronym, but a real impact. And the thing that struck me about listening to them, if they were here now, they would say they want to be part of the final decision. Okay, so I know in the case of some of them, they would appreciate a discussion with our staff. And that's one of the things I want to basically enforce with with the one we're doing tonight and the next two nights is, can we move each one of them closer to the final decision? While we're waiting for the whole picture to be put together, can we move each of them closer to a final decision and not wait 2 weeks to then set up those meetings? So I just wanted to have that general understanding.
Fair statement, and I appreciate that. John, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and part of how I see this unfolding, and Terry can help me here, is we would have to then obviously go to a tender process. So nothing is really permanent until we know what the tender costs are and when they come in. And there's always this decision-making capacity at various junctures of the process. I also think that we should be looking at project management and to manage these halls. And a part of that process is obviously to have close discussions with the volunteers that operate the halls, and so that they have an understanding of how it'll impact their operations. And I can completely understand why they want to be involved. I think the first piece is that they'll want to know if the municipality's in or out. And I think as we move through this process and with the legislation involved, the likelihood of us being in is extremely high, and mainly driven by the legislation and the use of these facilities. But I think the greater issue is, and with their community groups, is that to start working on supporting them in their volunteerism. And I think that's going to really help the halls. And I think that discussion should be ongoing as we recapitalize these facilities. It's important that they get used. So speaking with them is important, and working with them on future opportunities and future grant programs, and helping them recruit volunteers through education and stuff like that, I think is going to be extremely important. And every community hall has a life cycle. One community hall may have been extremely active 10 years ago, and it may have lost some of its members, and it's not as functioning as high right now, but doesn't mean that it's not going to function high in the future. As you know, we are going to experience a lot of growth in our communities. And what does that mean for communities coming together and using the halls in the various areas? And I think there's going to be some pressure there. So I think you're all moving in the right direction, and I think you're taking the right approach. And there will be discussions ongoing throughout this process with the volunteers.
Okay, Terry, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And just to add on to CAO Ferguson's comments, you also see in my presentations, Council, that we have the AODA renovations and those specific requirements, but you will also see that most of the halls also have other items that they also want to have to be repaired or fixed or replaced while we're in the business of renovating. Some examples are septic beds. Obviously, some kitchens need to be renovated. There's the fire suppression system for the kitchen. So there are other items as well. So what's that final number, to Councillor Patterson's comments and Deputy Mayor Burton, is that we need to come to that. What is the exact final number? Equally, Your Worship, there's also, once we really get into the weeds with our engineers, specifically on a certain hall, there might also be some opportunity to save some money. Burnside's provided a report to Council that was at the extreme highest end. So the $5 million, that's at the top end, everything being absolutely done as per the engineers. But when you really get into the meat and potatoes and start putting designs, engineered stamp designs, there may be some opportunity there to also shave little sections to save a little bit of money. So we don't know what that final number is yet. Again, you will see when I get to my presentations, Your Worship. I will provide those details for Council to consider. But somebody had made a comment that there's still a little bit of work to be done, and I think there is. I mean, I don't know if we're in a position yet to make final decisions. There's still a lot of information that needs to come to Council, and there's still a lot more information that needs to be talked about with Burnsides and our volunteers at the hall boards. So there's a lot more to come. And the original question is, can we make decisions today? I think you will see with those presentations that I'm going to share that there's still a lot of information yet that needs to be gathered. It's not all negative stuff. It's, a lot of it is quite positive in nature, but there's still a lot of information yet to be figured out.
Thank you very much. And I recognize there is still a lot of work to be done, and I absolutely want to continue to engage conversation with our volunteers. At some point, we will have to make a decision. And I think there's some good clarity that's going to come out of these presentations for the future of these halls. Councillor Deneen put her card up. Hello, Councillor Deneen. Go ahead.
Hi there. So I'm gonna, I hope, hopefully, please. I'm just looking at personal experience over the years. Renovating something that isn't up to snuff can take forever, and a new build can take like 3 months, save a lot, not have to have elevators, that sort of thing too. So we need to.
I'm apologizing. I'm not hearing Councillor Deneen very well at all. She's been broken up a little bit. So I'm going to give it another call here. If she can try to speak without turning on her camera, we'll give Phyllis an opportunity. Go ahead, Phyllis.
Thank you. I'm just trying to make it all one here, and I'm going to stop my video so I can at least see you folks. It's just been my experience. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. It's been my experience that, you know, you're talking about putting I know we're not talking about the Nottawa Hall tonight, but just as an example, you're talking about $826,000 or $827,000 into a property that might not warrant that. So I need more information as well, and I need maybe a revamp on the information that we've already got from our engineers as far as something to that effect before I could make any opinions. And I really want to talk to the volunteers again as well before anything's done or any decisions are made. Thanks.
All right, Councillor, I appreciate that. And I believe you'll find in Terry's presentation, he will present us with some options that include actually addressing getting more firm numbers or up-to-date numbers, perhaps even getting as far as architectural drawings, which would be a real positive.
Wonderful. Okay.
Yeah. So
Thank you. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Councillor. And yeah, I'll tell you what, Phyllis, if you wish to jump in and speak again, just turn your camera on for a second. You can flash your card and I'll acknowledge you, and then you can turn it back off. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, I did see Councillor Lamers. So, John, you want to jump in?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think you just answered my question, because I was going to ask Terry if he's got the engineer pricing on all the halls in his quote, because once we get down into the nitty-gritties, we're going to have engineering drawings on all the halls.
Yeah. Terry, why don't you give us a quick snapshot of it? You know that you're going to,
Yes.
The end of your presentation has all the options, right, Terry?
It does, Your Worship, yes, but if I understand Councillor Lamer's questions correctly, is yes, the budgets that were presented to Council, the number for modified FADs between the 4.5 and the 5 million did include a 15% for the cost of engineering and architects. So there was an engineering fee included in that amount. So it's not 4.5 plus 15%, 4.5 million plus 15% for architect and engineering costs. Those estimates were included in those amounts. If I understood the question correctly.
Does that help, John?
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
All right. All right, Council, I think we've gone around. Everybody's had a chance. That's great. Let's go to Terry. Unless John Ferguson, you have anything you want to add before we go to Terry?
No, I think everybody understands it. I think there's time to make a decision on Nottawa, and I think there's probably some halls that are more in a position to do something right away. I guess is the best way to say that.
Which is, I think that's a clear message already. Okay, Terry, I'm going to relinquish the floor directly to you for your full presentation as we hear about the Evening Hall Board. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. And again, just to recap very quickly, as Council knows, staff presented Council's options to them in individual meetings. I must say those meetings went very, very well. The board members were very receptive. The hall board members were very receptive to the information that we provided them. There was a lot of information, unfortunately, that we had to share with them. but the feedback that we got from all the 6 hall board presentations was that the information was quite educational for them. Some of them opened up a lot of eyes. And there was, providing them the big picture that council, with the decisions that council have to face. I think they were very appreciative. They were very receptive, like I said, and it was, again, it felt a little bit like Groundhog Day for myself because I was presenting quite often the same information to the all six halls. But the hall boards were fantastic. They were very engaged in their questions, provided a lot of healthy comments. And for myself, on behalf of our staff, it was a very worthwhile process. When we plan out these brainstorming sessions and when you plan out this process, you have to give it a lot of thought, to try to be successful. And there was a lot of different ways we could have went at this. But as you know, we decided to do the brainstorming sessions with council, gather your preferred options, share those options with the halls, and then gather their feedback. It took a little bit of time. All 6 halls had asked that they take some time to discuss further. They had further board meetings. And then ultimately they have, I received the 6th resolution yesterday. So now we do have all 6 resolutions in place. I think the hall boards did their due diligence, do a little bit of soul searching to really figure out if they're going to commit themselves to their halls in the future. And I'm pretty sure you will see that the feedback we received was quite positive. So again, we're still in the process. We're not at the finish line yet, but we are moving along. And I feel like, I still feel confident that the process that we're doing is a healthy one. So with that being said, I'm going to share the first hall. Again, if you're wondering in the order of how we're presenting the halls, is I'm providing these back to council based on the order that we received them. So obviously, you will see this evening and Brentwood were the first 2 resolutions that we received. And that's the order that we chose. There was no other specific reason on why we chose that order. It was just based on when we received those resolutions. So the first hall, Your Worship, I will share my screen again, and you will see here. And again, I can't put it into full screen mode, Your Worship, because of the way it's set up. I have to go into the final back details to tweak it with Zoom. Nevertheless, this is the template that you will see for all of our halls. Again, it's approximately 6 slides, so it's not too lengthy. But again, I think you're going to see it's very, very, very educational. So like I said, the first hall, Your Worship, that we're going to present to you today is the Evening Community Center. I've captured the resolution that has been provided, and I will share that with council today. So for the Evening Community Center, it was moved by Karen Cubitt and seconded by Claire Oster, that be it resolved that the Evening Community Center Board hereby recommend moving forward with the option 1, being to implement modified fads to the existing building and further explore past renovation proposal designs from Burnside. Again, to remind council, the past renovation proposal designs were the designs that the Evening Hall Board had completed back in 2016. So they also want to further explore those designs. And again, council, I've numbered each slide on the bottom right corner. Again, please jot down your questions or comments, and then also the slide number if you'd like. And I could always come back to that slide in the future to help answer your questions. Again, council, you're quite familiar with this slide, the second slide. Again, it lists all the recommendations that was provided by Burnside in their report. And again, on the bottom right side, that is the full FADS amounts, not the modified FADS, but in the Burnside report, they only provided the extreme details of the FAD design. So for lack of a better word, this is more at the higher end of the amounts for each hall. Again, it's very repetitious information. It's the same information that was provided to you before. I just brought it back for council's review. Here's the meat and potatoes. If you recall, council, when we went through the brainstorming session, on the top part of the slide were all the different options that council had that we brainstormed that could be provided to the halls, to the hall boards. And then from there, on the left side, council had provided two options to the Evening Community Center Hall Board. The first option was to implement the modified FADs to the existing building. Council had proposed a 75%, 25% commitment from Clearview Township as well as from the Hall Board. If we took the modified FADs amount as of 2021 of 1.2 million, if you break that down, it was representing 952,500 from the township, from council, as well as 317,000 from the Evening Hall Board. And this included the $20,000 of kitchen fire code renovations. We also investigated to install a chairlift versus an elevator. So that was also an option that council put on the table. There were some concerns about the cost of the ongoing LULA elevator operations and what impact that would have on the Hall Board's operating budget. So as we know, and I think Councillor Leishman brought this up in the past, that elevators are very expensive to manage and to repair and to be inspected. They must be inspected quite regularly over the course of the year. And finally, the last point made was that the 2015 quote unquote side renovation option by RG Burnside would be perhaps a cheaper option, and perhaps it would provide a larger kitchen, and it may not require septic system renovations or upgrades. So that was the first option that was provided by council to the Evening Hall Board. The second option was on the bottom left side, was to sell the building to a new incorporated board. Again, the option was to sell the land for $1, to continue having Clearview Township support for snow removal, basic services, insurance costs, taxes, community assistance grants. Also, there would be a 12 to 24 month implementation timeframe, perhaps even update the kitchen to fire code for them. Also, if it was sold to perhaps have it within a certain time frame of up to 10 years. The township would have a first right of refusal if the Hall Board wanted to resell it. And finally, there was the option of perhaps it might be cheaper for a new incorporated board to complete the renovations. So those are the two options that was provided to the Evening Hall Board at their meeting. As I mentioned, they took some time to think about it, and they provided to staff their feedback. So the first one on the bottom right is they were not interested in taking over the Hall Board or becoming a new incorporated board. They totally rejected that concept. Their preferred option, as per the resolution, was to they agreed implementing modified FADs to the existing building. They are willing to work with the township towards a 75%, 25% cost sharing commitment. They had expressed quite willingly that their fundraising program that they have is very healthy. So they're quite confident that they could own us up to that amount. Third was they requested to meet with the township's engineers to review the previous 2016 plans and investigate if any of those components can still be implemented in the 2021 standards. Fourth, the Hall Board had completed a community consultation back in 2016, and they feel quite confident, they still feel quite confident today that support is still valid. They have already put together a fundraising committee as part of their Hall Board. They would also like to include the cost of required renovations to the septic system. So they shared with us the problems that they've been having with their existing septic system. So while in the business of doing extensive renovations, they would also like to include those renovations as well. And finally, they would also like to include kitchen upgrades that would meet the fire code standards. So again, just to recap, council provided two options. The evening hall board came back now with council with one preferred option. Some key notes to consider. These are key notes that staff has gathered through while going through the presentations with the hall boards, or even in discussions with our engineers, or even internally within our own staff. So the first keynote for council to consider is that the evening hall board have expressed a ready to go direction. There was a hall chair meeting that was done on June the 2nd, and council has since received those minutes. The evening hall board chair was very vocal to share with us and share with council that they're ready to go anytime. Second, it is recommended that no in-house renovations or any donated material or services would be permitted under the Clearview Township's procurement process and construction liability protocols. So again, this would be a strict tender, and there would be a contract set with that contractor, and the township would be responsible for that contract, and no in-house renovations would be accepted. Third, Clearview Township would hire the services of RJ Burnside engineering firm to manage the tenders and perhaps the construction. CAO Ferguson was just talking about perhaps the option of a project manager or a construction manager. So that option is out there as well. At the moment, staff is recommending RJ Burnsides, as we do have an extensive history with them and the good work that they do. But council always has the option to perhaps keep the tender with one group and perhaps the construction with another. But either way, council would hire those services, not the hall boards. Fourth, council would be responsible for approving the final specifications and designs of the hall renovations in consultation with the evening hall board. But at the end of the day, it would be council that would approve the final specs. Fifth, council with the hired services, again, of their engineers, will be responsible for ensuring all the renovations are completed as per the approved specifications and designs. So again, ultimately council would be responsible for the final product. And finally, again, council may or may not choose to postpone any decisions until they review all the individual hall board reports. So council was talking about this just before my presentation here, that that you may choose to wait and accept all 6 presentations and make your decisions moving forward. Or again, that's council's whim. If you want to make decisions earlier than that, that's up to you. Some possible next steps for council to consider. As you've seen, there are some requests from the hall board to review other amenities. So the first option 1, would be to review the previous 2016 plans that the evening hall board was recommending, and to investigate to see if any of those components can be implemented in our 2021 standards. Staff, we anticipate that cost being approximately $5,000 to do that process. And we also estimate, with the current timelines that we know of with our engineers, it would take approximately up to 3-month process prior to any approvals. So if council wants to review that, do that process with Burnsides, you're looking at about $5,000 in about 3 months to do. Option 2 would be to review the requirements and estimated cost of the required renovations to the septic system. Again, the septic system is over and above the AODA renovations. We can review those requirements as well, see what work needs to be done and how much that will cost to replace and renovate. Again, staff estimates a cost of approximately $3,000 to do that process. And again, similar timelines as option 1 of 3 months. And option 3 would be to not do those options 1 and 2 and just move forward and renovate the modified fads as per RJ Burnside's list of renovations and estimated costs that was already provided in the report. You could include a septic and kitchen fire renovations. Staff would work on that. We could return to council with final project specifications and estimated projected costs, including septic and kitchen fire standard renovations. And again, we anticipate those timelines being approximately 2 months. So option 3 is actually not reviewing the 2016 plans as they've requested, kind of ignoring those plans and just moving forward with what RG Burnside, but including the septic and the fire renovations. Option 4, and you will see this for all 6 halls. Again, it was talked about during the brainstorming session, but it is always an option. You have not made final decisions. That option 4, of status quo, no renovations, that's always an option for council to consider. Some note regarding timelines. All 3 options combined may be completed within the 3 to 4 months that have been proposed. Also, staff is also recommending as possible next steps for council to consider is to update the management agreements between Clearview Township and the Evening Hall Board to include the renewed operations of the Evening Hall, the new financial commitment of the Evening Hall Board with corresponding financing provisions, and also clarify any outstanding misapprehensions with the existing agreement. As council may know, the existing agreement is one agreement for all 6 halls combined. What staff is proposing here is to have a new management agreement for the Evening Hall Board by itself. Again, you will see this consistently through all 6 hall boards, that maybe now is the time to renew the agreements that are in place and further put on paper Evening Hall Board's commitment. Also going during the same time is to perhaps create a construction agreement with the Evening Hall Board regarding the level of responsibilities and liabilities between both parties during a construction. If council, just to refresh council's memory again, we did create these 2 agreements with the new Village Green and the Creemore Community Foundation. We did create a construction agreement with them, as well as a management agreement. And again, staff envisions going through that same process. It's not hard to do. We already have a lot of existing agreements that we could use, but maybe now is the time to refresh those agreements. Also, we will be able to return to council with both final agreements for council to approve. Again, we anticipate those timelines being approximately 4 months to do. We would have to go back and forth with the hall board to come up with the final agreements. And finally, release a public tender for renovations of the Evening Hall Board. Once those options above are chosen and all the information comes back to council with a final new amount, council would be able to release a public tender for renovations of the Evening Hall. And the tendering process would take approximately 6 weeks. So that's the information that we'd like to share with council. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, Your Worship. I could always come back, Your Worship, to the presentation if council has any questions. Just again, refer to which slide, and I can always bring it back on the screen for you. But I know for discussion purposes, it's healthier to have everybody on the screen so everybody can kind of see each other. And I could always flip back and forth. That's not a problem.
Okay. I would like you to do that, and if I'll take the privilege of being the mayor by asking for a first clarification, and then I'll go to all members of council. It is something that we talked about with our hall board chairs. Terry mentioned that the CAO, Mr. Vachon, myself, and all members of the hall board chairs met and had a frank discussion about how this whole process is playing out. And so there is an item that I'd like to bring forward at this time before we move on any further. So Terry, if you would go to page 3 of your presentation that you just gave regarding evening, although this item is on every report, I believe, because it's something that we presented as a council. So on page 3, thank you, Terry. I'll bring to everybody's attention exactly right where your pointer was. Council option, first thing said 75% contribution from Clearview Township, 25% commitment from the hall board. In green, it says financing details to be determined. Okay, and then we added the kitchen fire code. So I have to advise all members of council, if you didn't read the minutes from that meeting and members of the public, to be frank, I answered a question that was posed by members of the hall boards, chairs, about the 25%. And frankly, where did that number come from? And so I answered them to the best of my ability, and I gave them this answer, and that is that the number 25, as in 25%, well, it wasn't well vetted or well researched as to what is an actual reasonable number. It was a number that council came to during the in-camera discussion so that we could move the entire project forward. We could have been stuck sitting for a while talking about the various amounts, dollar value, percentage this, percentage that. And so I answered the members of the hall board chairs by advising that while the number 25 was put out as the 25%, that would be an expectation for local hall boards to contribute towards this project, it is very negotiable. And in fact, you know, when we met in camera, we had lots to discuss, and perhaps we didn't spend a lot of time on that specific issue, but it was a number that was reached by council so that we could move the entire process forward. So just to give volunteers the clarity that please don't think we're holding them to that number, but it would be helpful for us as councillors to know what their level of commitment is and could be to help support their individual halls. So I just wanted to share that, make sure everybody on council saw that, and it was part of the discussion during our hall board chairs meeting. So can I look, Terry, thank you for the presentation. And I'm sorry I took the liberty of stepping ahead of everybody else, but I want to get that point out there right up front. Does anybody on council have any questions to Terry on a specific report about the evening hall board? Mr. Patterson, go ahead.
I was going to defer to John since he sits on the committee, and I will do so now if he wants to speak first. I've been following again backstage.
Well, Tom, you're not backstage to us. You're right here in the front of the stage. So happy to have you here.
No, I do want to comment, but I want to give John a chance because I know he's had a busy day today. Did you want to talk first, John?
All right, yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
Evening is ready to go. We're going to need 2 to 3 months, 4 months advance notice for bookings and everything. So if we can get the numbers down, percentage down, and we're ready to go. We have a fundraising committee set up. They're hard at work working on their fundraising already. So we just need the word and we're ready to go.
Okay. Thank you, John. Councillor Patterson, do you have some more you want to add?
Yeah, okay. So just to reinforce that point, because it's a good one, I think they already have 3 concerts booked.
Yeah.
You know, pending COVID and all that sort of thing, but in the September, October, November timeframe. So, yeah, they are ready to go. So here's a case where, while we're not going to be discussing the final yes or no to evening until we see all of them, but I think there's a chance now to sort out some of the questions. I'll say some of the gray areas still that I see between the 2 groups. So Terry, when we see, if I may, the Mayor, when we see options 1, 2, and 3, as you've laid out, I kind of see almost everything from the 2016 major pieces in option 3. The only thing I didn't see was the washrooms. The modified FAD said we can go from 2 fully accessible washrooms to a co-ed washroom up on the second floor, the upper floor. Is there anything else that we leave behind? Because the way it's stated, it sounds like when you say we're not going to do option 1, but we're going to do option 3, adding the septic and the kitchen fire renovations, if we add the washrooms in, does that fully satisfy what was in the 2016, or are there other things that we would not do?
Good question. That's good clarity. Councillor, appreciate that. Mr. Vachon, would you be able to comment on that? Is there anything further?
I'll do my best, Your Worship. Again, I'm not that familiar with the 2016 plans. They were completed before my time. But my understanding is that there are significant differences between the 2016 plans and what Burnside has provided as their modified FADs in their 2019 report. I'm not familiar with what those differences are. And the Evening Hall Board have not shared with staff specifically what those are. Perhaps Councillor Leishman, I know she's commented on that specific project in the past. She might be more familiar with what exactly they're referring to, but the Evening Hall Board's request was to bring back their 2016 plans and compare them to what Burnside has today. And maybe they want to make further changes, maybe small changes, maybe significant changes. I'm not sure. But we would have to go through that process with the Evening Hall Board as well as RG Burnside.
Certainly. Councillor Leishman, would you like to comment about any of that? Yes, go ahead, Connie.
Yes, thank you. I do have the plans here from 2016, and the plans actually show that there's 2 universal washrooms. And I think now that we know that we only need 1, that's a good cost savings right there. On the other, let's see, for the second main floor, proposed foundation. Okay, so there was, no, there was no washrooms. I think it was just on the 1 floor, as far as I can see. In my plans, the side stairs that you see in the picture that come down from the door are still there, but the door on the other side of the stairs is gone, at least in my plans that I see. And I'll show you, okay, where is that? Oh, wait a minute. I got it right here. So that's, I don't know whether you can see that. Can you see that?
Yeah.
That's the side, this little guy, that's the side, and you can see the stairs are still there. So in that little renovation they have on the side, there is an elevator and the 2 universal washrooms. That was in the original plans. But now that we don't need 2, we can go with 1. I don't think a lift will work because they have 3 levels that they have to meet. So I'm not sure about a lift and the stairs, whether it can be reconfigured or not. But in these plans, it was an elevator that was included.
Okay,
I
so
can give these to you, Terry, if you like. I can send them to you.
I'm pretty confident they're available around our township somewhere. Go ahead, Tom.
okay, so I guess this is where we decide now to funnel right down to the main issue. So my suggestion would be, I don't see option 1, 2, and 3 necessarily discrete. So I would say it's the first thing I would do before we spend the 5,000 is to have a meeting with Burnside and the Hall Board, and obviously township staff and council representative, just to answer some of the questions we're talking about right now. Just what is it that they expect? Because this has been discussed for a long time. And the question hasn't gone away in the minds of the Hall Board, from what I understand. They were quite comfortable with the 2016 plans all ready to go. Money starting to be raised, community funding and all that. And now it's been in abeyance. And their concern is it may be completely superseded by just the AODA standards. Their thought is, and I agree with them, I mean, from what I hear from them, I watch the meetings, that some of the work in the kitchen, for example, when you accessibility, it actually combined it with some of the things they were looking for in 2016. So rather than sort of have this option, either 1 or 2 or 3, I would support investigating, get a full understanding of what the 2016 plans were and what both parties agreed to at least coming back to council with. And, some may be discretionary, some may be too much fundraising for the municipality, for the board to raise, whatever, but let's at least have the new numbers. So I would support, actually, I know there's going to be a bit of an overlap here, but do option 1 and 2 to work towards what the general purpose of option 3 is. And then you're spending some money, and maybe you don't have to spend a total of $8,000 there. Maybe there's an understanding that you can do a little less. So I would support doing all those 3 in some form to avoid any further misunderstandings from this point forward or after the meeting gets started. So now we're moving towards a list, and then funding can be put together, and they can decide, for example, if the 75-25 formula works for them, and start the negotiations on those facts.
Great. I'm going to go to Mr. Vachon, and then I have some comments. Go ahead, Mr. Vachon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just bring the screen back up very quickly. Councillor Patterson, you mentioned, sitting down with the Hall Board and RJ Burnsides. That's what this is, and it will cost up to $8,000, and it will go through a 3-month process to do that. It's not either or. It's like when you talk to engineers, the meter's running. There's not just let's just have a friendly discussion and see where we go. If we want to sit down, and I agree with your recommendation, but we as staff would require council's direction to spend up to around $8,000 to do that with Burnsides.
I'd be prepared to make that motion.
Okay, just to clarify, it's not spending $8,000 and just have a discussion. No, if you want to have a discussion, it's going to cost $8,000 to include all those. And then you're right, we would have concrete information to bring back to council. We would have as close to a final number as you can possibly have, and then you could start having those discussions regarding the cost sharing. But just to clarify, we have to spend that money to engage Burnsides in that process.
So if we made that decision this month, September, October, November, we would have we'd be in a position to say what we're saying yes to for evening.
Correct. Yeah. And again, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Patterson, the $8,000 is not currently budgeted. So again, that's why we're seeking council's direction would be to further spend that money. And obviously you will see, you can take that number and almost multiply it by 6, because you will see almost all the halls have a similar process. So you can take the $8,000, multiply that by 6, because all the other halls will be asking for the same thing. So you're looking at about $40,000 to $50,000 to spend with Burnsides in the next months to do that process. Just
given the importance and the magnitude of this, I'd be prepared to move that motion for a budget reconsideration, and also primarily so that the groups can start working on something concrete. But I would urge that we make every effort to spend less than that by maybe having a pre-meeting with some people in terms of what's necessary to be done, but whatever it takes. Given this information that you've worked hard to put together, I think that's money well spent.
All right, Councillor Patterson, I'm just going to ask everybody to hold for a second. I acknowledge Deputy Mayor Burton. A couple comments I want to state. Again, our staff have prepared these reports with the information they've been provided. The front cover of this particular report shows a recommendation from their board, what their ask is. and that board has asked for us to consider their 2016 renovation project. So to answer Councillor Patterson's point, it's true that we could do that. We need to have a meeting between the staff and the members of the board, and I would encourage them to happen. I don't think that would specifically cost us money, so I don't think we need to make a motion to do it. But through the CAO, I think we could get the staff to do that and have that consultation, and then we can engage Burnside. Now, I want to make a comment about Burnside. Terry's right. Every step when we engage engineering, it keeps costing us money. And so, we can do this 6 times. We can engage this in upwards of $50,000, $60,000 spent on creating these individual plans all along so that we can then come to a point to make a decision. So in the preamble of this discussion, we had a good sort of point that was raised by Councillor McKechnie. How many halls are we doing, and how many halls are we renovating, and what are we doing? And the deputy mayor made a comment that he doesn't think that we can do anything but do all of them. So I think we need to acknowledge that as council, that we're moving forward, and we're going to need to have a discussion on whether we're going to do all of them, none of them, or not, because every step forward now keeps costing us money. And further, on the point about it being unbudgeted, to the staff member, Mr. Vachon, and to the CAO, I don't think we need to do a budget reconsideration. I think what we just do is give staff direction they can spend money from the reserve fund that we already have. I mean, we're already into 2021. I don't think we need to reconsider the budget. I think we just need to utilize the services of our budget available. So, if I may, we're going to need a motion here that tells us that we're moving ahead or not, and then we can continue to hear all these discussions about individual halls. I'm putting it on the floor. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Patterson, Councillor McKechnie, go ahead. Deputy Mayor.
I'm prepared to put forth that motion that we commit to fixing to the $5 million we have, and commit to moving forward to fixing all the halls.
I think it's a good motion, Deputy Mayor, but I wouldn't put a dollar on it because we don't know what that dollar is. The investigation needs to be done. We need to investigate how much we're actually spending before we put a dollar value on it. So I'll go to Tom next, and then I'll go to Doug, and then we'll ask for clarity on a motion. Tom.
Okay, well, I'm generally in support in doing all the halls, like you said, but are we at that stage? Here's when I want to move forward. So the motion I'm talking about is to meet with the hall board, sort out any inconsistencies, misunderstandings, clarity that are covered by those 3 options, and then to start working with them, recognizing that it'll cost some money for Burnside to do the engineering in evening. And as we go through each one of these halls, make those kinds of decisions. So that's the motion I'm prepared to do. And that's building on the work that this council has to do to get to the total number of 6. Now, maybe we'll have 6 at the end, maybe we'll have 4, maybe we'll have 5, but I'd rather move, I'm suggesting one at a time here.
Okay, Tom, I agree with you. It is going to be one at a time, but I think the reality is that every time we engage Burnside, it keeps costing us money. And if we engage them in 6 separate projects, it will continue to cost us even more. So if we engage them in one project and have them assigned to firm up these details for all of them, then that engages a lot of architectural drawings. Connie's, you just showed us a drawing from 2016, and yet here we are prepared to spend some money, but we haven't got a drawing on any of our buildings for 2021, have we? Not a one of them. To be frank, even our friends at Sunnydale, we've got some wonderful drawings, but they're also dated now in 2019. So, I'd like to know where we are. That's all.
So if that's what it takes to move it, so then I'm prepared to second the deputy mayor's motion that moves us forward. Whatever it takes. I think we're all saying the same thing here.
We are. Before I entertain the motion, I'm going to go straight to McKechnie. You put your card up. Go ahead, Doug. And then I see Phyllis. Go ahead, Doug.
No, go to Phyllis. I'm confused.
We all are, no
Yeah.
doubt.
No, I'd like to see us move forward. I think Barry mentioned something about 5 million in there. I'm a little bit concerned about that, but I want to see us move forward with Burnsides just to get an idea how much it's going to cost us. And I think Terry had said it would be up to, we'd be looking at maybe in November, which is a great timing because now we're dealing with the budget in November. But go to Phyllis, see what Phyllis has to say, and then let's deal with the motion that's on the floor there, I guess.
All right. Phyllis is next, and then I see Terry. Go ahead, Phyllis.
Hi there, thanks. Just again, Deputy Mayor Burton's motion, it said fix. The word fix was in there as well. And can we just do fix or replace?
Yeah, I'm not trying to fix anything here. We're trying to create a project that we can allow the staff to access resources to bring back information so individual decisions can be made.
Well, then I'm wondering if through you to the deputy clerk, maybe she could come up with some wording and maybe we could clarify it that way. Just a thought. Thanks.
And we're going to go to Terry first while the deputy clerk gets her thoughts together. Go ahead, Terry.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think I really need to clarify some key points here before this gets really too confusing. So for the first motion with respect to 5 million, that is only AODA renovations. So if you approve 5 million, you're not approving any 2016 plans. You're not reviewing any 2016. You're not reviewing any septic renovations. You're not looking at any fire code renovations. Those were not all part of the original plan. The direction that we received from staff was to explore AODA renovations only. That's the $5 million. So if that motion goes through, you're excluding all the other stuff that they've asked for. And you're going to see that consistently in all the other halls. They all have other items that they also want to review. So be careful when you say that amount, because that amount would only represent the AODA renovations only, nothing else. Very important to know. Councillor Patterson's motion is to spend the $8,000 to review all the other options, the septic beds, the 2016 designs. And also, I also need to remind council that $8,000 does not include final engineered stamp drawings. That's just the going through the process of exploring all that other stuff that they want and putting a dollar figure on what that is. That's not the cost of an actual engineered stamp, which Councillor Leishman showed you. That does not include that. That's additional funding, usually between 5 to 10. So just to help clarify that, Your Worship.
Okay, look at I want to go to the CAO before we get too deep. I've recognized every member now has put up their card. Mr. CAO, I think you've understood this conversation and the importance of this to our community to make this decision, do it right. And I would ask you to consider your recommendations on how the staff can exercise their authority to do what council's asking. Because there's a couple of steps here. There's obviously the first step of negotiation, second step of engaging engineering firms where we're actually spending taxpayers' dollar, third step of creating drawings for every hall, and then the final step will be a decision made by this council to do an RFP. So, I want you to consider that while I go to the other members of council as they speak, and I'll come back to you, Mr. Ferguson, for some guidance, if you may. Is that comfortable, John?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Walker's next, then Leishman, then Lamers.
Thank you, Your Worship. Terry, I was just going to say, so we are going to have to spend money with the engineering firm on every hall that we're doing to get us through options and then the final drawings.
Yep.
My question to you, Terry, one of them is option 3 for evening. If you were, there's no cost involved there. So what is the cost with option 3, or has that been looked into? My question is option 3, if you were to review the previous 2016 plans and throw that in with option 3, to me, then that gives us a vision at the end of that $8,000, hopefully, that's all it'll cost us. It gives us a vision then of the 2016 plans, costs. It gives us then an added cost of what septic will be. And then it also gives us the cost of a kitchen fire renovations. So we've got, in that option 3, we've got three ways to look at. If we decide that we can't afford to do the septic renovations or the kitchen fire upgrades, then we basically go to the modified FADS one that was sent. So that allows us as a council to see the total cost in that project. Instead of just doing FADS only, we get a chance to look at the other options there. So I'm prepared. I think we need to spend them, unfortunately, spend that money with each hall to have Burnside's review and give us some final costing before we can move to that next step.
Terry, any comment?
Yes, Your Worship, I agree with Councillor Walker. And alternatively, if you do not, Councillor Walker, if you do not investigate the final cost, then you're just going with what Burnside had provided in their 2019 report, which is only the AODA requirements as per their modified FADS list. Those are kind of your 2 options. So you are correct.
Great, thank you. Councillor Leishman, Lamers, then back to the Deputy Mayor. Leishman.
Thank you. Yes, I like what Robert is saying. I think you should do that to option 3 because actually I think the septic should be left out for now, but that's just me. I have to go back to the resolution always, and the resolution in my mind says to me that they want to look at the 2016 plans again. They do have full plans and drawings, engineered drawings for the back renovation already. They got those done themselves. Now that was 2016, but there isn't really a lot that has to be changed except for maybe some of the downgrading of the modified. So yes, I like what Robert's saying. I think we should do that into option 3 and move on. Because I quite frankly, I don't see us spending $900,000 on this hall. So if we can get that amount down, and if we can go back to the 2016, and if memory serves, it was not quite half of the cost of the back renovation.
I think you're right, in that neighborhood for sure. All right, thank you. Councillor Lamers, then Deputy Mayor, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Ferguson. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. Thank you, Worship. Yes, I see the hall boards need to have a special meeting on this to decide what they want, and then get a meeting set with Terry and senior staff before we go to Burnside and propose all this. We need to get down to the finals before we do anything. And I think I was talking to Jerry LeMay as soon as I got on, and he said there was a set of plans in the office someplace.
Yeah.
So there is.
John, I believe those are plans that Connie was holding up a minute ago. So
yeah,
she served on that board in the last term. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a big set in the office someplace.
Mr. Vachon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just going based on memory, I recall having a discussion with Burnsides because they also did the 2016 designs for the township back then. And my understanding was, and I think it was back when Mina Tsaris used to work for RJ Burnside. And his comment was that there are significant discrepancies between the 2016 design and the 2021, well, back then it was 2020 standards. So what those are, I'm not sure. We would have to get into the weeds and put those together and really check that out, hence the $8,000. But there was the 2016 plan, according to them, was no longer valid. It had to be completely redone. But again, you don't know until you actually sit down and put both plans there and review that. So, but there was some discrepancies, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. And that goes back to what Councillor Patterson was saying. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Burton.
Thank you, Your Worship. So first thing is my motion. I'm going to revise my motion and take out the $5 million factor. and just say that my motion is that we agree in principle to fund the modifications to all halls. And I think we'll just leave it simple and open-ended like that. So in principle, we're agreeing to that. That means that we are going to have to start looking at each one individually, what's involved. As far as the evening hall goes, yes, there was a plan out. The evening hall people raised money and paid for their own set of plans for what they want to do. But yes, those 2016 plans have to be reviewed to see if they do meet today's AODAs, which I suspect they probably don't. There's probably, I don't think there's serious modifications, but modifications that have to be made to that plans. The bottom line is we just don't have enough information to make a decision. And, the only decision we can make is, to spend the money for the engineers to meet with the hall board people and say, here's what the 2016 plans are. Here's what has to be modified to meet the, to meet the standards and decide where they go from there.
All right. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm just going to go to Mr. Ferguson here, but I would ask the clerk to keep that motion that you've got prepared between you and the Deputy Mayor prepared, and I'll call it on the floor with a seconder in a moment. Okay, so John Ferguson, you've been hearing this discussion, and I can appreciate from your level of experience that you've had in various capital projects. I look at this that we have potential to prepare the abilities for the staff to exercise some ability and some responsibility to spend dollars on researching information to bring information back to council. So I'm wondering what your take is on this and what you feel is the path that this could go. Mr. CAO.
First of all, thank you, Your Worship. And I would like to say that a lot of the discussions today are relevant, and you really need to talk to all three. We need to talk to our engineers, we need to talk to the volunteers, and we need to have that discussion amongst staff as to what can work within the budget. So my suggestion is, as Deputy Mayor Burton, is that the approval in principle means that you want a green light for us to go out and finalize this and then come back with the exact numbers. That's how we perceive approval in principle, and then you'll vote on the exact numbers. With respect to accessibility and recreation, if there's one thing that has changed rapidly over the last few years, is that everything from doorknobs to handrails, it's all slightly different, and some have just changed recently. So, and how doors swing open and their orientations for bathrooms, a lot has changed to really meet to meet all adaptive needs. So that's something that's probably changed from 2016. It does make sense. The hall boards are trying to see if the 2016, they seem to like some aspects of that design. They may see some cost savings. I think our engineers should be looking at the difference between the 2016 and the 2021 report, but also to find cost savings. I mean, at the end of the day, are there any other efficiencies that can be found from what they've looked at? And there's always something new that comes out in this process. So I would like to be able to say that to our engineers, is find some savings here as well and still meeting the needs if we can. And we have to talk to the hall boards. At some point, they have to agree that they're satisfied with the direction that we're going in. So council feels that they're meeting the needs of the public. And then we have to put this out to tender based on that process. So I think you should follow the resolution of approval in principle, but we have to speak to both the hall boards, get them to sign off on the final plan that they agree with, and to get the justification back from Burnside on the differences between 2016 and 21. So everybody's aware of why those changes must be. Okay. And that, I think, will help people understand why the design is the way it is. And I don't know if those discussions have occurred. So I think we can bridge those discussions with the community and get them to sign off. Does that make sense?
I think, John, you're going in the right direction, in my opinion. And I think it also gives the ability to Terry and his staff to exercise the abilities of the budget to discover information that then can come back to council for a full report to vote on. right now we're voting on information we don't actually have a full understanding of. So, I like to see us have a full understanding before we put it to a vote. Thank you, Mr. Ferguson. Madam Deputy Clerk, it's nice to see you this afternoon. How are you doing? Have you and Barry, or have you got an understanding of the motion that Barry's putting forward as the mover? Deputy
Thank you, Worship. I do. My suggestion is we do have Terry does have another presentation to do on Monday, and it will be dealing with both the Sunnydale and Ottawa. And I would suggest that you perhaps receive this one for information and maybe introduce that motion on the Monday meeting when you are considering, when that presentation is finalized, and then you will be considered, his presentations will then be done, and you can present that motion as Deputy Mayor Burton had suggested at that meeting. And because then you'll have all of those presentations that Terry has already presented finalized at that time. Just a suggestion.
Thank you. I think the one comment, though, that comes from the Deputy Mayor's motion is that it's a in principle point, meaning that we in principle want to renovate all 6 of our community halls that are part of this study. And so, I think that clarifies the point that none of them are for sale, and that we are going to engage taxpayers' dollars and the efforts of our staff to do that. So that's why I think it's not a bad motion to have here today, Deputy Clerk, but I see your point and your logic in it. Madam Deputy Clerk, I don't think there's anything wrong with us doing it this way, is there?
No, there isn't. You're just going to probably do the same motion again on Monday.
That could be.
Well,
Terry, you had your hand up? Sorry.
Your Worship.
If I may, Your Worship, Deputy Clerk, yeah, my motion is I don't see how the motion would change on Monday, because we're confirming, we're in principle, we're going to look at renovating all the halls. So that includes the halls we're going to be talking about on Monday as well. So.
Oh yeah, I wasn't referring that it would change. It would just that your 4 presentations would have been completed, and then your decisions would have been made after the 4 presentations have been finalized. It was just to receive this for information for today, and then you could move forward with that motion when the 4 have been completed, but it's really council's decisions as to what they want to do at this point in time.
Thank you. Let's go to Terry, and then I'll go back to you, Barry.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I can just clarify, we don't have 4 halls, we have 6 halls. We actually have to add another meeting. So there's 3 meetings. So on Monday, you would not be in a position. There's another meeting to come at a later date that has not been determined yet. I just received the Duntroon Halls resolution like 3 days ago, and Dunedin's last night. So there's still there's a 3rd meeting that would have to take place. Just to add to Deputy Clerk's comments, there's actually another one. Plus, I have another one to do even tonight. I still have Brentwood to present after we're done with the evening. So there's still another one this evening, and there's still 4 more halls to present.
All right, Mr. Ferguson.
I guess to cover this off as best we can is that you're getting information on the halls that you're getting today, and you can make a motion approval in principle on what you've received as information from the halls you presented today, and we can make the same resolution again. And that way the halls know that you've dealt with it and you've made a decision. You're going to be pending your decision on the information of the other halls coming in at the later meetings. So I see you can make it again based on just approving in principle the halls that you're getting at that time.
Deputy Mayor.
Well, that confused me a little, but I think my motion's pretty basic, to approve in principle the renovations for all halls. I think I'm trying to keep this motion as simple as possible. And we can do a separate motion to receive this information today, but I think my motion's pretty basic and simple. In principle, we're agreeing to renovate all halls to meet the AODA standards and whatever additional stuff.
Okay, so Mr. McKechnie, then Mr. Patterson. Doug?
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with the Deputy Clerk. I think that maybe this motion's a little bit premature. I would be willing to receive the motion, But approving the motion in principle, I don't know. I just feel that that sort of might lock us into renovating all the halls. And I want to see all the information before I make a decision on whether we're going to do all the halls. I know I mentioned earlier that I would support doing all the halls, but having said that, you know, we're looking at a fairly large tax increase, and so I want to get more information. So I would receive this motion, but I don't think I can approve it. I like the idea of waiting until we've heard from Terry on all the halls before we, you know.
May I suggest that I put the motion on the floor, we get a seconder, and then somebody puts forth to defer it until we've heard all the.
Barry, it's been a really good discussion, and I think it's healthy for us as council to have these type of conversations before we get into the formalities of movers and seconders. So I think it's a good thing how we're trying to get here. So that's why I've been delaying asking for a seconder. But I will go to only one more speaker, and that'll be Councillor Patterson, and then I will put the question. Mr. Patterson.
I've heard enough. I already stated that I'm prepared to move them, to second the motion that the deputy mayor has spoken to. I understand the terms. I think CIO Ferguson has stated very clearly the staff's understanding of what we're doing here. And I think the hall board should know if this council's ready to move in principle, and we're sitting down now with the details. They're all mature volunteer groups. They understand if the bill gets a bit too high, that's where we start negotiating and setting priorities. So I'm prepared to, if we're prepared to go now with the general thrust to preserve them all and renovate them, then so be it. Count me in as the seconder.
All right, well, thank you then, Councillor. So, Madam Clerk, could you read the motion with the mover of Deputy Mayor Burton and seconded by Councillor Patterson?
Yep, that Clearview Township Council agree in principle to fund modifications to all halls.
Go ahead, Mr. McKechnie.
Is this where I jump in and ask that we defer this until after the Terry makes his final presentation on the all 6 halls? Is that appropriate?
Procedurally, you can do that if you can, if there's a seconder for that motion to defer. Councillor Deneen, are you seconding the motion? Very good. Can I have okay. So we have a motion to defer the motion. So can I have a opportunity, council, to consider that we are going to be discussing only the deferral? Has anybody got any questions about the deferral? No questions? Okay, we're going to call the motion on the deferral. However, sorry, I need to find out when it's deferred to, which would be the end of the 3rd meeting. Terry Vachon. Madam Clerk.
That is correct, Your Worship.
The end of the 3rd meeting regarding the small hall AODA renovations. Any discussion on the deferral? Seeing none, I'll call the motion. Those in favor of deferral? Those opposed? Wow, so that's a split vote. That makes it a failed motion to defer. So we'll go to a motion, the original motion. Is there anything further? This is where Councillor Broderick being in attendance would be helpful, right, guys? Just pointing that out. Yes, Councillor Walker.
Your Worship, I'm just concerned that we are giving false hope to the halls, even though we're saying in principle, we're going to renovate them all. If the numbers are high, the hope is that they understand that some halls may not be done at all, or we may have to get rid of some. So I just want to make sure that that's understood, because I just hope we aren't giving a false impression that we're going to do all the halls in principle. So I will not be supporting this motion. I don't like it, and I think it's premature.
Great. Mr. CAO, would you like to respond to that question about the councillors asked or brought up, the issue of of making a commitment such as this?
Your final numbers aren't approved yet. It's approval in principle. And I think when you do that, if it becomes too high of a number, then you're well within your authority to pull back the reins and to adjust your figures accordingly. There is one issue, though, is that we're not sure if one of the halls actually wants to be renovated. It may be something else. The final recipe for what they want to do as a community may be something else. So it may not fall exactly in having that hall renovated. That's the only oddity I find in this. Each situation is a bit unique. I think in general, working with the community halls, in principle, we want to upgrade them all. And in some cases, in one case, we may not be renovating that hall. We may be doing something different. So that's my feedback. I don't think you're completely covered by the in principle for all halls, I guess is what I'm saying. I think there's one that may change.
All right, that's good interpretation. Thank you. Councillor Walker, are you going to need a comment on the CAO's interpretation of that?
No, Your Worship, I just hope the halls understand that if we don't move forward because of costs, that they fully understand that even though we're saying we're going to renovate the halls in principle, that's my concern is the volunteers may not totally understand in principle.
Perhaps you can say approval in principle and within budget.
There's no budget right now.
You don't know what the budget's going to be yet, so I'd be hesitant to say that.
It's a tough one. Councillor Patterson, do you have a comment about the original motion?
Yeah, normally I would agree with Councillor Walker. We really should have a lot of discussion, and but we have. We've been talking about this for a long time. I think this is a vote of confidence to the hall boards that we're committed to preserving what they mean to this community, and I agree again with what CIO Ferguson's understanding is from the staff point of view. We've got more work to do. And we've said this today several times, that we think if we sit down and really start in anger looking at what's necessary to get to a final decision, we're going to save money. That's the expectation I have in doing this exercise. And I think Councillor Leishman has said the same thing, that if we take a look at for example, evening, the 2016, we start looking at all the things, we may find that there's some things we don't have to do now. We may find that some are more expensive, but that's all part of coming back and telling us the right details, the right facts. So I think it's more important to move forward than to hesitate some more. And I think we've talked enough to the volunteers. They know where we sit. They're anxious to know, where does council sit? Where does council sit? And I think we're going to tell them that today.
All right. Members of council, anybody else? All right, if I can ask Councillor Deneen to join us on screen, I have a quick statement I'd like to make, and that is that I believe in supporting of this motion, we're sending a message that we are in fact clearing and clarifying any of the other options that have been presented by our staff in regards to possible sale of buildings, possible, establishing independent boards. All of that discussion that we've had prior and that we presented will now be removed by having a motion of confidence coming from this council to support renovations of these halls. With the proviso that the CAO has recommended that as we go through these meetings and receive these individual hall board reports, there may be some changes to that. But the principle of it all is that we do show a commitment to community halls in Clearview Township. And so I think that also is important to note that goes back to a decision that was made decades ago, it seems, by this council underneath the leadership of Mayor Ken Ferguson, where we made the decision that we were in fact keeping the halls. That was another decision that was made by this council many, many years ago. So I think that this is a simple motion that the deputy mayor has put on the floor. I appreciate the Councillor Patterson seconding the motion. And I also appreciate the understanding from our CAO that the word principle is an important aspect, that we will work this out for each hall individually. But I think this is a good opportunity for us to clarify. Councillor Deneen has just disappeared, so maybe I'll take the opportunity now while she's joined us to call the motion? Members of council, you've heard the motion as presented. I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? Are there any members opposed? And the motion will carry. So thank you for that. So we will, clarify a motion that confidence to our volunteers and to our community that Clearview Township will continue to have community halls and small halls. Very good. Can we get back to the main business that Terry presented, and that is the discussion about the evening hall. So Councillor Patterson, I believe you had a couple of items that we discussed earlier. Is there a motion that you'd like to present regarding evening specifically, and then we can go to the receiving of the report?
Yes. I'm trying to remember the words I used the last time. I would like to follow the recommendation. Let's go back to Terry's chart where it shows the motion that the board, the very first chart, be resolved that the Evening Center Board hereby recommends moving forward with option 1, implementing modified fads to existing hall and further explore past renovation proposal designs from Burnside. So, and that was their resolution. I believe that we encapsulated everything that they would like to see in option 1. Review the 2016 plans and investigate if any components can be implemented in the 21 standards. And I'm looking at 2, estimated cost of required renovations for the septic. So they're asking for an estimate of the cost. I think we should have that. And then so at the risk of overlapping, I would say that my motion would be that the council adopt option 1, 2, and 3 as part of our in principle investigation of the renovations to Evening Hall to establish I'd say draft costs, estimated costs rather, towards council's final approval.
Okay, Councillor Leishman, but I'm going to just ask the deputy clerk to review that motion. I'm going to go to Councillor Leishman first, and then I'll go right back to the deputy clerk. Go ahead, Connie.
I was just seconding what Tom just said.
I thought that's where you were going, so I thought it was good. All right, Tom, that was a kind of a lengthy motion. I'm hoping that Brenda has capsulated something there that we can discuss.
Well, if you had given me more time, it would have been even longer.
I understand.
Councillor Patterson, I think maybe you're going to have to redo that motion because it got a little muddled partway through. So if you could be a little clearer on what you're looking for.
Okay, let me do it in very simple terms and then we can fancy it up. I think the council should approve including option 1, 2, and 3 on Terry's report in their effort to develop final estimates of costs for council's approval to renovate Evening Hall.
And report to a future meeting.
Yes.
Brenda, are we comfortable?
Yep. We'll get it. We'll get the actual motion.
You have me recorded.
Yes, I do.
And I guess the seconder is happy with that?
Councillor Leishman, are you the seconder? Thank you very much. Any discussion on what Councillor Patterson is proposing? Members of council? If I may, I'd ask to the CAO and Mr. Vachon, timeline to get that. I mean, you're indicating approximately 3 months. Is that something that's reasonable, Terry, given the workload that you have in front of you?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, from my perspective, from my timelines, it's very reasonable. It's Burnsides. I know they're extremely busy at the moment with many projects. You know, I'll be having those discussions with them tomorrow. Based on my past experience with the amount of workload we've had with Burnside, typically this kind of work would take 3 months. We're still in the pandemic. There's always the chance that it might take longer. You know, but I feel comfortable from my perspective, yeah, that's fine. That's not a problem. It's going to be Burnsides.
All right. And as always, Mr. CAO, you'll be able to report back to either myself or council on the progress of this or any challenges that are facing it. And further, Mr. CAO, there wouldn't be any question or any concern about any dollar value of expenses that would need to be incurred. Do you need any direction from council in this motion for spending of dollars, or is this within the abilities of the staff to access the reserves?
My understanding is the only thing, my understanding is the $5,000 and $3,000 has not been budgeted.
Terry?
That is correct. And Your Worship, you know, those are estimates. I mean, you know, like you really never know until you really get into it with the engineers. Like the more complicated discussions and issues get, the longer it takes. Those are my best guess estimates at this time. You know, approximately $8,000 for that.
Councillor Patterson, did you have an amendment?
Well, I was going to ask you if I did need one, because I'm doing this based on all the discussion we've had this afternoon, which has been very positive. So I was going to ask the CAO and Terry, the staff recognize in this simple motion that it would include the authority to take from reserves the monies needed. And also, do you also understand from this that it would involve discussions with the hall board?
That's part of option number one already in the hall board.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I see our treasurer has been madly working on her calculator. Perhaps she wants to jump in here. Kelly?
Thank you, Your Worship. Your Worship, through to Councillor Patterson. If you could add in the resolution that it's to be funded from the existing halls renovation reserve, that'll make it quite clear that we're not setting a specific budget dollar for it. However, we will be using that renovation reserve to cover any of it. Because in reality, at the end of the build, all of these plans and that are included in the cost of that renovation.
Okay. So added. I have full confidence in our deputy clerk.
Thank you. And our deputy clerk will acknowledge that there's a change to the motion. And the seconder is thumbs up. Are you comfortable with the seconder? Thank you. All right. Anybody else on council with any questions or comments regarding this motion now as gently amended? All right. Councillor Deneen, do you want to join us? Are you comfortable? Thank you. Okay, I'm prepared to call the motion as presented. All those in favor? All right, and that carries. Thank you very much. Carries unanimous. All right, and the last motion on this one is a motion to receive the report regarding the evening hall board as presented on this date. I think that's not exactly how it's worded. It's on the agenda. Actually, tell you what, we'll hold on that one and we'll do it after your Brentwood presentation. Sound comfortable? Okay. Terry, go through the Brentwood presentation. If there's any questions, go to Brentwood. Thank you. Go ahead, Terry.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have some good momentum going on. So Brentwood Hall, let me just share my screen. You see that, Your Worship? Councillor Walker, I can kind of see you. Can you see my screen? Yep, Councillor Walker, yeah, okay. So the Brentwood Community Center, again, very similar template, very similar setup as the evening hall. The resolution provided by the Brentwood Community Center Hall Board. It was moved by Melanie Walters, seconded by Erica McKnight. And be it resolved that the Brentwood Hall Board hereby recommend the modified FADS option with potential changes moving forward based on community commitment and support. Again, same screen as we had during our brainstorming session. It captures all the list of required renovations to meet our FADS requirements, because that's what was provided by Burnsides. Again, just brought it forward for council to review. Again, on the left side, council had provided 3 options to the Brentwood Hall. The first one was to implement full FADS to the existing building as per the RJ Burnside report. Again, the similar 75%, 25% commitment from the Brentwood Hall, with financing details to be determined. If we use the 2021 estimates, including the kitchen fire code renovations, it represented approximately 604,000. Second option provided by council was to implement the modified FADS to the existing building. Again, same 75, 25% commitments. If we use the estimates provided by RJ Burnsides, the 2021 estimates had it at approximately 262,000. And again, the third option provided to the Brentwood Hall board was to perhaps sell the building to a new incorporated board. On the right side, you can see the feedback that was provided by the Brentwood Hall board. The first one is they rejected the full FADS option. They also rejected, and they're not interested in the purchasing the building for $1 and creating a new incorporated board. They are, however, interested in option 2, which is they agree to implementing the modified FADS to the existing building. They are willing to work with the township towards a 75-25% cost sharing commitment. Although the new chair of the Brentwood Hall board, former Mayor Chris Vandecruz, had expressed during our chairs only meeting that they felt that was a little high, and they were one of the hall boards requesting or wanting to know if that number was negotiable. And as Mayor, your worship, Mayor Measures had mentioned that he did say it was a flexible number. So they were willing to work towards it, but they did thought that was a pretty big commitment. Also, they have already put together a fundraising committee as part of the hall board. They would like to include, they would also like to include the cost of required renovations to the commercial kitchen that they have. And they also provided the cost of wanting to add a new outdoor accessible washroom to the existing hall. So this was not part of the original RJ Burnside's report. So again, Hall Chair Vandecruz had expressed the option of perhaps adding another fully accessible washroom to the back of the building. And they also want to include the septic system as a possible renovations. So not only have the AODA requirements, but also the septic system, and as well as new kitchen renovations, and lastly, add on a secondary washroom to the back of the building that would be fully accessible. And of course, they would also like to include the fire code suppression system as well. Again, very similar. Brentwood Hall had expressed their willingness to proceed with the renovations. The Hall Chair Vandecruz had expressed that during the Hall Chair's meeting on June the 2nd. Again, recommendation to consider that no in-house renovations or donated materials or services would be permitted under the Clearview Township's procurement process and construction liability protocols. Again, Clearview Township would hire the services of RJ Burnside engineering firm to manage the tenders and or perhaps also the construction. Council approves final specifications and designs of the hall renovations in consultation with the Brentwood Hall board. Council, with the hired services of the engineers, would be responsible for ensuring all renovations are completed as per the approved specifications and designs provided. Council may or may not choose to postpone any decisions until they review all the individual hall board reports. And finally, something pretty unique to the Brentwood Hall board. The Brentwood Hall board had since received 4 resignations, and they have also added 3 new board members, and as I mentioned, a new hall chair, former Mayor Chris Vandecruz. Again, very similar to the evening hall. Option 1 is to review the requirements and estimated costs of required renovations for the septic system, the commercial kitchen, and the new outdoor add-on of accessible washrooms. Again, very similar cost estimates provided of $5,000 for that option and approximately a 3-month process. Option 2, just to renovate as per the modified FADs, so no additional items as per RJ Burnside list that they provided with their renovations and estimated costs. But we could include the septic and commercial kitchen and the fire renovations. So this would not include the add-on washrooms in the back. And then obviously we would return to council with final project specifications and estimated project costs, including the septic system, commercial kitchen, the new outdoor add-on accessible washroom, and the fire standards. So that's all in. Again, option 3, status quo with no renovations. Again, that could be put back on the table. Again, very similar to the evening hall. Recommend that we update the existing management agreement between Clearview Township and the Brentwood Hall Board to include the renewed operations of the Brentwood Hall, the financial commitment of the Hall Board with corresponding financial provisions, and also clarify any outstanding misapprehensions in the existing agreement. And as I said earlier, right now there's one agreement for all 6 halls combined. We're recommending having one management agreement for the one hall. Also create a construction agreement with the Brentwood Hall Board regarding the level of responsibilities and liabilities between both parties. Again, return to council with both final agreements to be approved, looking at about a 4-month process there. And then at the tail end, if once the information has been brought back to council with final estimated costs, release a public tender for renovations of the Brentwood Hall Board. And again, that tendering process would take approximately 6 weeks. That's it for the Brentwood Hall, Your Worship.
Great, thank you very much. I'll go directly to our members of council. If you have any questions to Terry on the report about the Brentwood Hall Board and the Brentwood Hall possible renovation and the expansion of a possible washroom? Yes, Councillor Leishman, I see your card first. Go ahead.
Thank you. Terry, where did they come up with the outdoor washroom? Because that wasn't in the original, as far as I know, that wasn't in the original plan. It's just something that they thought of, I guess.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Leishman. Yes, as I mentioned, there was 4 resignations of the board. 3 new board members gone on board with Hall Chair former Mayor Vandecruz. And when they met for the first time, that group were the ones that brought that project forward. So you're correct, it was not part of the original plan, but Mr. Vandecruz has asked that we add it on to this project, or at least explore the option and find out what it costs.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes,
so
go ahead.
The original drawings, they included accessible washrooms inside, yes? So,
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, just to perhaps, Your Worship, just to clarify, the intent was to perhaps add another washroom that would have outside access, so that the folks would not have to go into the building to get access to the washrooms. They can access new washrooms from the outside.
Right. Okay.
All right, thank you. Just to help clarify there too, I attended that meeting that was held, and that discussion did come up. It was pointed out that certainly they have a lot of activities that are held in their outdoor field behind, as well as I pointed out as a member of county council, that our county link bus stops right there too. So it makes it a kind of a busy little spot. So an accessible outdoor washing facility might be something that we could look at partnering with the county on a project in the future. So something to think about. So Councillor Walker is first, and then Councillor Lamers. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, thank you. You pretty well answered my question. My question was, what purpose do we need an outdoor washroom, first of all? And secondly, knowing how things have gone in the past with our outdoor washrooms in Clearview Township, I'm not so sure it's a good move. And the third point is, who's going to look after it? Is it going to be locked up, unlocked? There's also, it can't be left open 24/7, because being on a well, they're going to create themselves some other issues that might not be able to be rectified as if the well goes dry and stuff. So I have a little concern on the outdoor washroom, but get a price on it, I guess. And then we can always make that decision from there.
You bring forward some great points there, Councillor Walker, and certainly from your experience and around our community, we have had some bad luck with outdoor washrooms. So thank you for that. Councillor Lamers, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, you answered most of my questions that we have the Lynx bus stop in there. They would like, we have a porta potty there for them now. So they would like an indoor washroom, and we do have a lot of outdoor events that we can utilize the outdoor. We just have to try to figure out the locking mechanism on it for security.
Perhaps I can just go right to Mr. Vachon. Terry, when we did the Gowan Park, we put in a pretty good little locking system on that outdoor accessible washroom. Can you just review for council's review how that works?
Boy, you really put me on the spot there, Your Worship.
I sure did.
I don't recall. I don't recall the locking system that we have in place. We haven't used it in a couple of years.
I know. Well,
I honestly, I forget the setup. I apologize.
So it has as I recall, it has a timing system on it when it's active, and so it'll only be open for certain hours of the day. It has a button that you can press that opens the door from the inside automatically, and it's a pretty impressive facility if we can ever get it open after COVID. Tom, do you have any recall of that? Because I think it's right down there in your board.
Yeah, it has a time of day function to it, so we can control its access.
Yeah, so that's something that we can consider. Go ahead, Terry.
Also to add, Your Worship, we are seeing, which is quite popular now in recreation facilities or outdoor facilities, is those punch codes styles, and you can it's hooked up wirelessly or a cell phone style, and you can change those codes. Actually, I think Brentwood Hall actually changed the front door locking mechanism to that setup, where there's a code that you put in, and you put in that specific code, and they can change that code by the minute. So that seems to be a very popular setup as well. Yeah. So for example, for the Simcoe Lynx, you can provide them a daily or weekly code, and they would have access to that washroom with that code only. I've seen that before.
Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of utilities that we could exercise when we do these renovations, and these are the add-ons that come along. But to help answer the question about how this actually came about, Chris Vandercruz is the chair, by the way, who's been a chair of that board for some 20-something years prior to being the mayor when he stepped up and became the mayor. He has a great knowledge of that building. So to be quite honest, we quite welcome him back as the chair of the hall board at this time. So yeah, he brought that forward as an add-on to this project. So I think it goes well with us doing an investigation. Does anybody else get any questions about the Brentwood presentation? Anything? Is there any motions from the recommendations? We did have some options at council. Yes, Councillor Leeson.
Yes, thank you. I would like to move option 2. It includes everything. And I think we need to know what that outdoor washroom is going to cost us, especially if we're putting a specialized lock system on there. So I think option 2 does include pretty much all the things they were asking for, and it covers the modified FADs.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Before I call a seconder, Terry had his hand up. Go ahead, Terry.
My apologies, Your Worship. I thought it was option 3, but I was looking at the wrong presentation. Councillor Leishman is correct. That's why I brought it back up on the screen. It is option 2. My apologies.
So, Councillor Leishman has proposed option number 2, which as a motion would also include bring back a report to council for consideration. Anybody? Yes, Councillor Deneen, would you like to speak?
I was just going to second your motion.
Thank you, Councillor Deneen. Councillor Deneen would like to second the motion. So it's on the floor. Is there any questions or comments? Deputy Mayor, are you still with us? Or any members of council? Any questions or comments? I'm sorry, you're muted there. And then I see Councillor McKechnie. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
No, I don't have any questions. As I said, I'm still here.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure you're still here. Thank you.
I've been here all along.
No problem. As I get closer to a vote, I like to make sure everybody is with us. So thank you. Councillor McKechnie, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I just want to make sure that, are we looking at a cost of about $5,000 for that option number 2? Is
Yeah. Good question. And to Terry and or John, Terry, what's your comment about potential fees that may be involved in that?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just bring it back on. You're looking again at the same, approximately 5,000 is what we're looking at. Around $5,000 to do option 2.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
But again, if I could just remind council, those are just estimates. There's no hard and fast number for engineers, but it is an estimate.
All right. Is there any further questions on the motion as presented? I'm going to go to Brenda Falls. Brenda, would you have any concern about the motion as presented? Deputy Clerk?
No, Your Worship, it's straightforward that Clearview Township Council approve option 2 and that a report be brought back to council.
Very good. Thank you. Councillor Patterson?
Might as well get the final details. So if we move option 2 and add 5,000, do we change the date on option 2 from 2 months to 3 months?
Terry, John, is the timing approximate, or what's your thoughts?
Terry, you've had more experience with the process, but I would say let's be consistent, make it 3 months. And if we can get it done sooner, we will.
Terry?
Yep, and I concur with CAO Ferguson, Your Worship. And I think the last motion, we also talked about utilizing the reserve, as Treasurer McDonald had mentioned. You might want to add that as well.
All right, so Brenda, you can add those 2 items into the motion about utilizing the reserve and that a sort of an approximate value of $5,000. Is that comfortable? Thank you. All right, mover and seconders. Yes, go ahead, John Lamers.
Does that require the estimated cost of the renovations to the site and the commercial kitchen?
It's in there, isn't it? Yeah, that's the commercial kitchen costs.
Okay. Yeah, Your Worship, it's all in. It's to investigate all the options, all the add-ons.
Okay, and that'll bring back a report to council. All right, nothing further. Councillor Deneen, if you want to join us. Council, we've got a motion regarding Brentwood Hall. It is in regards to option number 2. Brenda Falls, our deputy clerk, has it fully recorded. Mover is Leishman, seconded by Deneen. I'll call the motion. All those in favor? And that motion carries unanimous. Thank you, council. All right, if there's any other motions, then I'll call the motion to receive. Any other motions or any concerns about these 2 halls as well as the entire project? All right, council, awesome. Council, there is a motion on here. It's a recommendation, be it resolved, the council of the Township of Clearview hereby receive community halls, small halls presentation regarding Evening Community Center and Brentwood Community Center presentations for information. So mover and seconder to make these official received. Deputy Mayor, Councillor Leishman, and any questions? Thank you. I'll call the motion. All those in favor? All right, and that's received. Okay, and that concludes this section of our agenda. Look forward to more discussion and conversation about these halls at a future date. As well, I'm sure Terry, John, and or our treasurer or even our clerk's department will keep us up to date if anything changes. As we know, the moving target of AODA changes all the time, so we want to make sure we keep up to date on it. So thank you very much to our staff who were presented at this. Council, I got the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of this council meeting unless there's anything further. Seeing nothing further. Recommendation be it resolved that bylaw 2181, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the August 5th, 2021 council meeting, be presented for a first, second, and third time. Finally passed on the 5th day of August, 2021. A mover and seconder on the motion, please. Councillor Lamers and Councillor Deneen. And thank you. I'll call the bylaw. All those in favor? And the bylaw carries. Council, we have the motion to adjourn. I do have one thing I do want to say, and that is that this morning we received news that the former mayor of Wasaga Beach, a good friend, Mr. Cal Patterson, passed away. And so we extend our condolences to his family and to the community of Wasaga Beach. Cal Patterson was a good friend to this community and this entire region. He served as the warden of Simcoe County for many years. And he was a great confidant and a great mentor to many people. And so I just want to offer that condolence on behalf of the Township of Clearview. Certainly, we're going to miss Cal. He was a good guy, and he made a great impact to our communities. So I want to just acknowledge that. And I hope that we all understand that cancer sucks. I hate it. Council, a motion to adjourn. Recommendation be resolved. Council meeting adjourned at 4:48 p.m. Mover and seconder, Councillor McKechnie, Deputy Mayor Burton. All those in favor? And that carries. This council